Start in 1 minute. If you could come take your seats, thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight for this joint session between the American Chamber of Commerce Women's Committee and ICT Committee. Just a couple of quick notes from AmCham. First of all, AmCham is actually one of the largest chambers now, and we have 8 different committees. These are 2 of them who have joined together to put on this event tonight on digital inclusion, empowering women, and overcoming divides. Want to thank our sponsors, Raintree and Itakate for the tacos. Everybody gets a free taco. That's outside afterwards. So we will start the program and have a panel discussion. We are live streaming the event, and thanks to Mango Tango and their team, well, my team actually, for doing the live streaming. And we're also going to use an interactive tool, which I'll talk about later, where anyone can ask questions from the audience, including from online. So again, thank you to Raintree, Itakate, and the Mango Tango team, and please consider joining the American Chamber of Commerce to participate in events like this. And with that, let me please turn it over to Ms. Marian Laird, the American Women's Steering Committee member.
Hello, everyone. This is a little bit intimidating, so I'll keep it short. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, thank you so much for being here tonight. We're very excited for this event. So my name is Marianne, and I represent the American Chamber of Commerce Women's Steering Committee, and our goal is to foster an inclusive environment for women in business and in the workplace, and to highlight the unique challenges that they face and provide solutions. I invite my fellow women committee members to be here. I know there's a few here. Say hello. So we have, can you stand up, please? Thank you. Yes. And we organize monthly events. And this is our second theme of the year around digital inclusion. And we're very excited to have joined forces with the ICT committee to highlight these cross-cutting topics. Digital literacy is a crucial skill in today's society where 90% of jobs worldwide have a digital component. And technology presents immense opportunities to advance women empowerment, but women are still underrepresented in digital services and tech-related careers. So I'll pass on to Chris to now get into the main event, which is the panel.
Thank you, Marian. And so I put my hat on for the ICT committee now. And actually, I do want to acknowledge there's a couple of board members here. Ivana is one of our board members for the American Chamber, and I am. And actually, I think we might be the only ones here. So anyway, now I put my other hat on for the ICT committee, and I'll keep it short. We also meet regularly, like the Women's Committee, and we address technology issues, and I invite you to join. We do something once a month. There are QR codes on the back table to get on the Telegram group for the Women's Committee and for the ICT Committee, so please consider that. And with that, I would like to invite our distinguished panel to join me on stage here. Her Excellency Chea Ratha, thank you. Undersecretary of State. Undersecretary of State for the Ministry of Industry, Science, Technology, and Innovation, MISTI. Ms. Ivana Trancini, who's the country manager for Visa. Ms. Hannah Najar, who is the regional program manager of Go Digital ASEAN for the Asia Foundation. And Mr. Manu Rajan, division CEO of Wing, the financial payments company. And then me, I'm the CEO of Mango Tango and AmCham various hats. So let me just explain quickly. This is a panel discussion, so you're all invited to ask questions. And what we're going to do is we have an interactive tool called Slido. So there's a code and a QR code that will go up. Here it is. And actually, before the first thing we'll do, I'm going to ask everyone to just say a couple of words about themselves, even though I just introduced you. Then Her Excellency Ratha Chea has suggested that we start with a little game, a warm-up exercise, and that is this one. What word comes into your mind when you hear the word programmer? So you can scan the code and type a word in. And meanwhile, I'll ask us to just go around quickly and say a quick word.
Hello, it's on. Hi, Ivana. I've been in Phnom Penh for only 9 months, but have worked with Visa and in the industry for almost 10 years. So that's payments technology and financial services. So I hopefully will be able to give some perspectives on how we see some of these challenges and gaps being closed in other markets, and will leave the Cambodia expertise to my learned colleagues.
I think we each have one, yeah? Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I'm a regional program manager at the Asia Foundation, and I'm looking after Go Digital ASEAN, which is a regional digital skilling program for small business owners and entrepreneurs. So I'm happy to share thoughts about entrepreneurship at a regional level, what we've learned from implementing the program, and also share about public and private partnership, because the program itself is funded by google.org, and we are endorsed by the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on MSMEs. We'll pass to Manu.
Thank you. Manu Rajan. I'm the division CEO of Wing. I've been with Wing for, this is my 5th year, so 4 years in the 5th year running. Before this, I've been in Africa, Papua New Guinea, different developing countries for about 10 years, and before that in India. This is the 23rd country where I'm getting to do some work for Amaranth. So excited about it. So when it comes to women empowerment, digital inclusion, financial inclusion, so that's something that is part and parcel of what Wing has been doing here. So quite excited about whatever that we have done, and more than happy to be sharing whatever we know and learned over a period of time. So feel free to ask questions. Any question is welcome. Thank you. Over to Excellency.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is, I'm going to speak in Khmer. My name is Chea Ratha. I'm currently holding a position as the Undersecretary of State at the Ministry of Industry, Science, Technology, and Innovation. My background is coming from a tech startup called Khmum Technology, an e-commerce platform. We was one of the women. I was one of the women in tech that developed the e-commerce in Cambodia and helped support the local producer. And then I am also another hat that, like Chris, wear many hats. Also the Vice President of Cambodia Women Entrepreneur Association. Looking forward to this panelist discussion. Is one of the great topic and very timely for our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. And actually, I will start with excellent Chea Ratha, because this was your suggestion here, to ask this question: what comes into your mind when you hear the word programmer? I see that the word men is down here, but it's very small.
Yeah. May I play a little game? Because it's late and everybody must be tired and time for like feeling hungry and stuff. So I want them to get up a little bit and do some exercise. If you want to learn something, you have to be in a state of learning. This is what we should do. So this is a great exercise, and also I want to also emphasize one tiny bit of exercise. Can you close your eyes and picture a programmer? Okay, ready? How many people picture a train driver? When we talk about programmer, engineer, maybe someone with engineering side, they can picture like a train driver. Okay. How many people picture Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook? Nobody. How many people picture man with a hoodie and in front of the computer? Wow, a lot of people. How many people picture me, a woman? Only one person. Oh, I see. Higher. Doesn't count. You already know me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, thank you so much. Please give a round of applause. And one more exercise before we get into the discussion. Okay, everybody pull your hand to the front. Just one hand, right hand side. And move it to the back as far as you can. No, behind you. Okay. And remember where you stop it, okay? Remember where you can pull your hand and stop it. Remember it. Okay, thank you. And now, close your eye again. And picture yourself moving your hand to the back again. Picture in your mind. Don't do it, just picture. Follow the instruction. And then picture that you can move it twice as far as before. Picture you can move it 3 times as far as before. In your mind only. Now 4 times as far as before. Okay, thank you. And open your eyes. Now move your hand. Actually, move your hand. How far can you move to the back? Sam?
A little bit more.
More? You feel that you move more? Who feel that they can move to the back 25% more than before? Good. Who can move 50% farther than before? Or okay, thank you. So, thank you so much. Give yourself a round of applause. Thank you. So, later I will tell you the reason. Thank you.
Okay, so what we'll do, I have a few questions, and one of them is, I want to know the answer to that. But we'll wait. But we'll switch to the next Slido slide, and then everyone can start putting in questions here. And if you're on your phone, you can see the word cloud as well. So I have a few questions to start with, and this is for anybody who wants to answer. But if not, I'll call on you. So I was just, to start with, I wonder if you could share, if somebody or all of you could share any insights from your experiences, either here or in other markets, on what has worked to promote gender equality in technology industries, in technology fields.
Should I start?
Great.
I was going to do the other places where it's worked. I actually don't think there's probably a country in the world or a culture in the world that could say that they've nailed gender equity in any industry, but particularly in the technology industry. So I guess there's no real solution, but one of the elements that I think works, but it's taken actually me personally a long time to get comfortable with this, is the fact that we actually do need to be very conscious and hold ourselves accountable into metrics. So things like insisting that on panels we have a parity of different perspectives from a gender point of view. In recruiting, that we have, representation from different genders when we go through recruitment processes, that we have parity and gender equity in the panels that interview people, not just the people that we put into those roles. And this is, in a lot of countries, I guess now maybe potentially quite basic as a concept, but it's quite hard for organisations, particularly when in the technology sector, where the vast majority of your candidates are weighed in one way or another. So forcing that outcome, it feels quite uncomfortable for a lot of organisations, and it feels quite uncomfortable for women in those organisations, because you don't want to be identified as being put in a role or being considered for a role because of your gender. But I do believe that maybe we do need to over-index a little bit for a little while in that kind of crunchy, uncomfortable place, so that we can start to set the examples that we need for younger generations to have a go as well. So whilst I felt it took me a while to get there, I think actually putting very hard expectations on quotas of representation is only one way to kind of move the needle.
Let me just say a quick thing about the Slido thing. These are questions for the panelists. I think some people are answering the first question. But so they're questions that you want to ask of the panel. And you can also go and you can vote on them and vote them up, so the most popular questions go to the top. So anybody else?
I think, well, so to speak very generally, I think at any point when you're talking about gender parity, I think it's a mistake to look only at one lens, to assume that the barriers that women are facing in Cambodia are the same as in other countries, even within Southeast Asia, and even within Cambodia, the barriers that women living in an urban setting face are very different from those that women face in a rural setting. And so I think it's important to take an intersectional and holistic view, to remember that when we design things for women, that, you know, there is no singular woman, and that it's important to include, you know, thinking about family structures, thinking about the setting that woman lives in, because for the three of us sitting on the table on this panel, you know, we are women, but that is only one piece of us, and I have seen a lot of things fail because that is the only thing that's considered.
What is the main challenge for Cambodia to go digital? And I echo the same answers of Ivana, that I don't think there is any one country in this world that has mastered the art of equal gender equity and gender inclusion. But when I look at the business that we manage here in Cambodia, I notice that out of the 8 million registered users that we have, more than 50% are women. Fantastic. So you have more than 50% of Cambodian, of the Wing customer base being women. But then when I look at how many of them have a mobile app, then I notice that it is about 35% of them. The 65% of the women customers don't have a mobile app, they use a card. Then I look at the telco data to understand how many of the smartphone users of telcos are women. And I see 30% of the smartphone users in Cambodia for some telcos are women, 70% are men. This is in spite of us having 100% smartphone penetration in Cambodia. And then I look at the distress fund disbursement that happened from the government during COVID and still continuing. To the people who held a poor ID. And then I see that 80% of them are women. So women are not owning a smartphone. They have a mobile phone. They don't have a smartphone. They're not confident enough to download a financial services app and do a financial services transaction, and they're poor. So these are the barriers. So I'm not answering what the solution is. I'm just saying what the context is. So that's where we stand. And then the first step towards solving the problem is to realize that there is a problem and what those problems are. So I'll just leave it at that.
Did anyone else have a comment on that? Just this is your personal experiences with maybe what works, what's worked for you, or what you've seen work.
Thank you for the question. Basically, like Ivana mentioned, no country in the world has solved this go digital yet. And I have been thinking a lot lately about Cambodia as a country, about the world. How can we help? And we know that government have been, speaking from the government side, we have been giving a lot of roadmap, going digital roadmap, SDI roadmap to 2050. And we also have implement many roadmap getting us to go to digital. But it's that one of those roadmap is to build our human capacity. And as mentioned in one of the answer, infrastructure, this is also what we are planning to do, 3G, 4G, 5G. Those are the things that we need, because going digital meaning have internet and high-speed internet across the country, but we still lacking those infrastructure. And as we know that from a long time ago, when we, like 20, 30 years ago, when we talk about a chicken that got a cold and sneeze and die, nobody have a thought about a global pandemic, right? And 20, 30 years ago, if a bank in US overland, we never thought about the economy will be on its knees, for the global economy on its knees for the next 10 or 20 years. And so all of this, we call it globalization. In one country may affect us as well in Cambodia. And also when we talk about women empowerment, women going digital, back in the 1960s, did you know that computer programmers are more women than men? When we have the computer in the side of the living room, those are women who pinching the card for the computer programming are women. So why did it get changed from now have so many less women into the programming or into the technology? It's because like back in 1980, when the computer become more popular, like Apple computer, Microsoft, then it's become the size of the small one, right? Apple computer, Steve Jobs invented this. And then the parent bought the computer for their son. So he put into the son's room. And they got all the time to play with the computer. So that's why they get more confident, they're learning the code, they're learning the programming. And the woman, the kid, the girl who want to play also, they don't get a chance. This is why we have till today that the mentality, the society, that women cannot learn technology. This is the lacking, and then we keep on falling behind because we don't have the time or the capacity. The parent have that mentality that women cannot study STEM or learning programming. So in Cambodia also we have this, and back in the US or back in the world, we have the same problem. So how do we work together to break this problem, right? This is what today's session. So I'm open for idea and also discussion from the audience. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. How can we break those stereotypes where there's a cultural norm or institutional expectation? And I just wanted to add that my parents bought me an Apple II Plus computer in 1978. I'm older than I look, I hope. And it was for me. It was not for my sister. Yeah, no, that was the expectation. No, you're right. I think that's changed in the United States, I hope, in my home country, but I think I've seen some of the statistics here on STEM, and it's the same. I think we're challenged with the same stereotypes. does anyone have any thoughts on how we can break those or change those stereotypes? Certainly the role of, one thing that came up in our preparation for this session was the different roles of government, civil society organizations, NGOs, and private sector. Maybe I can start with you, Manu, on what the private sector might do to help incentivize or encourage more women to enter the technology fields.
Yeah, so let me take that in two separate parts. So one is the lack of women participation in STEM education and technology when it comes to being the drivers of digital inclusion or digital growth in the country or the economy. And the second part is the existing challenges that the people who are there, who are running businesses, who are in the formal economy today and are excluded from it, not because they want to, but maybe because of the way the country has evolved over a period of time. Now, Excellency had a very good point. A lot of times what happens is in a developing economy, when the disposable income is not too high and there are multiple children at home, and then there is a child who has to be sent for higher education in science, a lot of times it is the male child who gets a preferred treatment and the female child doesn't go. So that's also one of the reasons why across the world, developing countries, STEM education requires focused effort and focused inclusion from the women participation in STEM education. And it has to start at the root. It has to start from the schools. It has to start from training the teachers, and it has to be a focused effort from private sector participation. But when it comes to the businesses that we manage, there are a plethora of other problems there. So you have a large number of women who drive this economy, but in a very informal way. You have more than half of your micro SMEs or SMEs are women in this country, and they're excluded. And they're excluded because of multiple reasons, various reasons. They do not have a business that has a formal entity, and because the business doesn't have a formal identity, they cannot have access to finance, they cannot go get credit, they cannot build their businesses on from there. And even if they want to go to a financial institution and say, okay, forget about my business, but here is some collateral that I have to pledge to get some credit, then a lot of times they don't have the title of the property, maybe in the name of the male counterpart. Now, even if I have, and then I pledge that property, and then I get some capital and I start a business, then comes the question of how do I generate the working capital. Now for the working capital, again, I have a problem. I'm stuck because I cannot go and have access to finance from any formal financial services. So that's one big problem that needs to be cracked, and world over, everybody knows what the problem is. And everybody also has solutions, but they're all in disjointed verticals that are standing there. So we have multiple companies that provide invoicing, account management software, where your ledgers can be maintained, etc., but that's standalone solutions. Now, Chea Investments has Kotra Real, fantastic, simple solution. You have Bungie, you have Kiyu. There are many solutions that are in the market. Now, if I take one of the financial statements generated out of the invoicing solution and go to a bank, go to Wing Bank, and then say, Wing Bank, will you give me a loan? Most often, the financial institution may not trust that financial statement because they say, how do I know it is not fabricated? So then the solution there is long answer to a very simple question. But then the solution there is the SME or the micro SME who doesn't have a registered entity, registers their businesses, then they can employ, then they have to employ somebody who will do the bookkeeping, and then they will generate financial statements, they will submit it, they'll pay their taxes, etc. But if I do that, my cost of operations will go up. Then it affects my price competitiveness. Now, when it affects my price competitiveness, my neighbor who doesn't have a registered business will sell more than I do. Now, so that comes to the second problem, saying, how can I scale up my business even though my margins come down because of my cost of operations are going up? How do I scale up my business so that it still makes sense for me to have a registered entity? The GDT has done a fantastic job by saying you have a tax exemption for the first 5 years. First 5 years if you register your business. But then the question is, what after the first 5 years, right? So that is where you need to have a solution that provides everything together in one place, where you have access to finance, where you have access to market, and you have access to technology. Because you need technology to help you scale up your business without having to incur disproportionate costs. So that's something that we are trying to do as a private sector player. We have Wing Market, we have Wing Agri, we have Wing Mall. We have created these platforms with an intention to provide all these three solutions in one place. So you come on board, you have your access to market. There are about 8 million people you can access to without having to incur a penny extra. And then you scale up your business, and there are fulfillment solutions that are provided. Then you, by default, you generate financial statements which can be used by the bank to give you access to finance. There are some of them over a period of time, because of the fact that they've been doing transactions, can improve their credit history. Then there is revolving credit line that is assigned to them on the platform itself. So that becomes easy working capital for them. And all this comes to you on a technology platform for which you don't pay. So the solutions are built. That's the easiest part. Now the adoption is the biggest part. So that brings us to the last part, which is the digital and financial literacy. So that's something Visa Foundation, the government, and National Bank of Cambodia all have been doing a great job in driving the finance. One of the particular ones that I still remember, I'm still fascinated by, is Train the Trainer, where the National Bank and Visa Foundation actually went to the schools to teach the teacher trainees on financial literacy, so that they go back and then start this from grassroots levels at schools. Sorry, long answer.
No, that was great. And focusing on the private sector, I wanted to key in on something you said about the cost, because sometimes when we're trying to meet quotas, which Ivana mentioned, or trying to over-index on bringing women into the system, it does have perhaps an anti-competitive cost for business that raises prices. Is that a place where, and I'll ask maybe Hannah, is that a place where non-governmental organizations or NGOs can play a role, or perhaps the government can play a role, or how do those different parts of society come together to make it an incentivized for business, so that it's not a cost necessarily to over-index or bring women in, if that made sense?
It does, and I'm smiling because as someone who's always worked for NGOs, in my previous job I spent a lot of time working in mentorship, and all of the private sector always wondered what everyone else could be doing to improve the employment situation in Cambodia, and I think it's a question that we all have to be asking ourselves. Not what can everyone else be doing, but I think there's something that we can all be doing. As far as cost, I'm not going to answer that question because I think that's not really my area of expertise. But as far as what non-governmental organizations can do, I mean, it's a support function, right? And as far as working in spaces like education, or in mentorship or soft skills development and technical skills development, I think all these things factor into that. So there's a space for young girls who are starting in school to be joining after school classes. There's a space for young kids who, so I think the original question was about stereotypes, right? Which that's a learned thing. So if you speak to any kid when they're 4 years old, they'll tell you that they're going to be a rocket ship princess, and they will believe that they can do that. And that goes away the moment that you start to tell someone that that's not realistic, or you can't do that. And so this can be built into classrooms, this can be built into families, this can be built into businesses. If you teach the people around you that this is something that anyone could do or that you could do, they'll believe in that. And of course, it's not just as simple to believe that you can do something and it will happen, but it's a core part of it, because if you ask any kid in rural Cambodia what they want to be when they grow up, they will tell you they want to be a teacher, a doctor, or a police officer because that's what they see. I don't know if anyone would necessarily tell you that they want to be an entrepreneur because that's not really something that you see. You know, it would be net law. It wouldn't be an entrepreneur because it's someone who's selling something on the side of the road, right? But if you tell someone that you could be an entrepreneur, if you look at someone like Ratha and believe that that could be you one day, it will make a big difference. And I think that that's something that everyone can get involved in. I mean, it shows up in the workplace, it shows up in families, and it shows up in schools.
I think also Facebook influencer is one of the top categories now.
Yeah, I think the whole you can't be what you can't see is actually spans all dimensions of this topic, from youth financial literacy to female small business financial literacy to inclusion in the technology sector as a professional or as a graduate at a university. Like it's kind of one of these truisms that if we can embed that in every single dimension, then we're making some progress. And you know, we've done, thank you Manu for mentioning the foundation, obviously the work that Wing does and as a key partner is like incredible. And the technology that you're developing is first in class, and then you put a face around that and an experience around that, and people can start to see and practice. And so when we think about it, for example, we've hosted a number of programs in the fintech sector. So when you think about small businesses that are technology-focused businesses in markets like in Europe, in Australia, and we did this in Latin America as well. We do female-led startup or fintech-focused startup challenges, right? So you can only participate if you're a female-led fintech. And that really then, the way that we promote that and the way that we reshape stories around that and the way we continue to tell those stories for, you know, the few years to come starts to put a face on, you know, what does tech entrepreneurship look like? Like, what does it actually look like? And it becomes real. So those kind of programs, I think, are really important. We also did a number of programs around supporting small business. So when we did those promotions around, you know, elevating small businesses during COVID in Australia and New Zealand, we particularly chose female-led small businesses, and we were unashamed about that. We were, you know, right now during COVID, where females, you know, there was a lot of data to say that women were worse off because of the pandemic. We had a responsibility to go, we're just going to push that message and pick those businesses. And they were cookie makers and florists and paper makers, and they were, you know, really creative industries, and they were appealing and for young women, but they're also entrepreneurs. So breaking down what that looks like as well. And I know that's not about digital, but I think it's just reinforcing that point around you can't be what you can't see. Just one other thing that is kind of touches all of this as well around doing and learning and doing. And right now we're at such a fortunate period in technology's development that, to Manu's point, you know, everything having to be technology-led, we don't have to sit people in a classroom anymore to learn how to manage money or to learn how to deal with technology. We can jump straight to the point, and that looks like embedding really great personal financial management into mobile banking apps. So, for example, there's an amazing female-led fintech in Singapore called Lucy. And Lucy is a bank for all intents and purposes, a financial platform that has been designed for women in Singapore specifically in mind, and the challenges that those women face around managing families whilst also having full-time jobs. Because in Singapore, women only spend a month away from work and then they go back, or 2 months maybe. And so that balance, and so they've got specific capabilities and value propositions to support those women. Now, the philosophy of Lucy is when they want to expand into other markets, they'll go and say, well, we're not going to just replicate the platform that we had in Singapore to develop a neobank targeted to women in Cambodia. We're going to do the research around what does it take, what are the problems facing women in Cambodia, and how can we help solve those. So back to Hannah's original point around just giving people the tools and building and using the technology we have available to build really relevant capabilities. We're so far ahead from when, you know, I was growing up and it was classroom learning. So I think we need to lean a little bit more into that experiential side versus just classroom learning on its own, which has its merits, but also has its limitations. So.
Thank you. Just something you mentioned about Lucy is how it was designed so specifically to solve challenges that women have in Singapore, and thinking about how much the context matters, how much it matters the environment that you're in, and obviously we're in Cambodia, and what's Cambodia's context, and just since we've talked to the NGO and private sector side, I'm wondering if Excellency Ratha could maybe talk about what initiatives the government has to work within the Cambodian context to encourage more women, either entrepreneurs, because you're right, everything is digital now, so there's a digital element to anything, but what the government might be doing to support that here in Cambodia.
Yeah, thank you so much. For on the ministry side, we also have initiative to work on how to define what is woman-led business owner. So we're working on that definition so that with the UN Escape help, we are doing this definition so we know exactly how do you define woman-led business. And with that, we can, after we find out the definition, then we can propose to like tax incentive, better tax incentive to the government, how like Menu mentioned 5 years, what after the 5 years, what can we offer to them? Because like during the COVID, a lot of, even the government give out this incentive, they did not be able to get it. They cannot access those incentives because of they not register and they don't have the education to get information of those information, right? And also as during the COVID, we also as a CWA, wearing a CWA hat, we also were able to negotiate with the SME bank to get 5.5% of interest rate for women-led business owner who are in the priority sector such as IT business owner and also like in agriculture, in tourism, all those priority sector during the COVID was able to get 5.5% of interest rate. So this is something that the government put in a lot of strategy to try to help build the capacity, get access to finance for women entrepreneurs. And also, as a country, we also have a roadmap like agri-tax, edu-tax, and tourist tax, many roadmap to helping getting Cambodia toward a digital economy. And also, one of the roadmap is to help motivate, get younger access to graduate from STEM, 40%, 40% in STEM. And as we know that back to my previous, in the beginning, we were talking about how do you picture programmer, right? Programmer always picture as a man, but not woman. So in Cambodia, we only have 7% back in 2018 study tax and IT. And right now we have about 16%. It's increasing. And the STEM also increasing to 35%. But that is the women that study STEM by themselves. They encourage, they want to study. But if we have parents encourage them, the number can go up to 65%. That is really jump because parents are the one that motivate. So what we're working on is try to build a strategic framework to engage, equip, and empower women toward the digital economy. So what we do, we engage from the private sector through called a triple helix of collaboration between the private sector, government, and academia to come together, working together to find a solution, strategic problem to solve the problem. And also solution to solve the problem. And also we have the engage, that's the first E, engage, and then we equip them with capacity building, with reskilling, upskilling. So these are the things that they need to learn, to build the capacity so they can participate in the digital economy. And empower, the third is empowering, which means that as Hannah mentioned, to see is to believe, right? You need to have a role model for them to see that, yes, it is possible for women to go into technology. It's possible to have a role model that women can go into government, to get them inspired, and then to be able to say that, yes, it's possible, right? But with all those empowerment, it's all need to come within themselves. So that's come into my second exercise that I point that to do the move your hand to the back first time, right? You can only do a little bit. But with the second time, when we say that you can move farther, you'll be able to do farther, right? 25%, some of them 50%. So it's all about belief in yourself. In the beginning, nobody, it's the same capability. Nobody put a limit on you on how to move your hand to the back. But it's your mentality, holding your belief. So this, all the women, I see the question that how do you encourage young girls to study STEM? So that you have to believe in yourself. So for me, I was not meant to be an IT person. I start out as, my dad wanted me to be a pharmacist. Because like in Cambodia, parents, they always say, okay, study pharmacy, you can open a pharmacy at home, so you have a more flexible hour. But when I was in US, I asked my friend, she said, I asked her, what is your major? And she said, don't you know that IT is the most paid job, right? Easy to find job. So I said, okay, I go for it. When I go into the classroom, I don't see a lot of women, it's all men, right? But my nature, I love math. So I see that computer science has a lot of math in it. So I just stick with it, continue. Even though we see a lot of men and small, we only had about 10 girls in during that time. We stuck together, the girls stuck together, and then we were able to graduate together. And the career, so I'm saying this so to motivate the young girl here that who want to pursue in this type of career, that with the synergy as an IT, and also I have an MBA in finance, and I work as a financial analyst. But with the synergy between IT and financial analyst, I was able to use that synergy to leapfrog into my career. Because when I was work as a financial analyst, most people, they don't know a lot of computer. It's using Excel, basic Excel. And with my skill, I will be able to like automate the spreadsheet with automation using, before they closing the book, it takes them 3 days to close the book. What they do is copy the Excel from one spreadsheet to another and consolidate it. So I went in there and I automate the whole thing, and it took them only 3 hours. So this skill helped me get Employee of the Year. And also when I moved to Australia, were able get a lot of benefit, be able to train people in China. So and come back to Cambodia, I'll be able to do a startup. And now, in the Ministry of Industry, Science and Technology, we are only 2 women out of 20 under Secretary of State, so 10% in the top leader. So this is a career path. It's very, I mean, a woman in tech have a lot of flexibility because when I did my startup, I have my kid, and only 3 months old, I start working, coding at the same time and take care of the kid. So for the girl, it's very flexible for you. You will have work-life balance, be able to work at the same time and stay at home. Because in IT, you don't have to stay at the job, right? You can just work remotely. So I would encourage them to give it a chance for the girl who want to study STEM. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's an amazing story of your journey. And I guess my only question is, how did you tell your parents that you did not want to be a pharmacist and you did not listen to them?
Because they don't know what is computer science, right, at that time. And I said, I'm not very good at memorizing because pharmacists, you have to memorize a lot of words, like a lot of technical stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I said, I'm not very good at memorizing. I only know, like, maths. It's easy because you do analysis and yeah.
No, and I'm joking a little bit, but you were able to tell your parents. But I think you hit on a good point, and there's a lot of research done on the context in Cambodia, and the parents very typically decide what the career is. So that's another thing that we sort of have to overcome in our context. Let me ask one of the questions from the audience, which is very similar to some of the topics we've been talking about, but it has its own angle, and maybe it's related, which is, how would we encourage girls or young women who want to pursue technology education, but they've been told that they can't, that they've been bullied or discriminated against, and maybe they've been set back? What can be done to offset that or to help encourage them? Any thoughts? It's a difficult question.
Well, like I mentioned before, it's very difficult for the woman to go into well-dominated career, right? Well-dominated classroom. But the thing is that you have to believe in yourself. Like it's like an egg, right? If there's a lot of force from the outside, the egg will crack and life end. But if it crack from the inside, life begin. So it's all start with you. So you have to believe in yourself. Even though there's no man, there's a lot of men, you still need to believe in yourself and go in there and make the man. Because like when I interview with a lot of my staff, they said that the girl doing admin stuff, but the man doing the project programming, they don't give good assignment for the girl. And so for the girl, they need to give, talk to the man. Don't do homework for me, just show me how to do it, you know. Showing is teaching. Yeah, so believe in yourself. Thank you.
Thanks.
Just to add on, this is not really for my current job, but in my previous work in Siem Reap, I was working with rural schools, public schools. And, well, the short answer is prove them wrong. But the longer answer is, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people out there who won't believe that women can be successful in the tech sector. And a lot of those people are women, but a lot of them, more of them are men. And I mean, one of the stories that I think of is one of the first engineering students that we had that came to study in Phnom Penh. And they were top of their class because they took notes. All of the men in the classroom were so certain of their place in that classroom that they belonged there, and so they never took notes. And the women showed up every single day and proved them wrong.
It's a good story. So let me, I think I'm just cognizant of time, so I think we have time for a couple more questions. And also, if anybody wants to ask a question with a microphone, that's okay too. Here, can you? Oh, great. Thanks.
Hello. It was a very enlightening discussion, and I want to quote some statistics here. I believe almost 46% women graduate from college, which is more than men. Around 56% of women are doctors in developed countries. More than 70 nations have had female leaders, and a quarter of the seats in national legislatures is occupied by women. On the other hand, the startling statistics, around 8 countries, only 8 countries have equal rights for men and women, placed on the same pedestal. And those countries would be, I guess, France, Belgium, Sweden, Denmark, Luxembourg, Latvia, Iceland, and Canada. So what is it preventing us then? Is it the societal psyche that perpetuates this thraldom of women, this boys' club culture, the parochial and the narrow mindset? So what did it take for Ivana, Hannah, and Her Excellency to lead by example and to shun this, I believe, this silken hubris of masculine prejudice?
I don't want to be too mean to men, to massive stereotypes.
Do it.
No, I don't, because I mean, we're at a point in time, right? So you just said it yourself. There's only 8 countries in the whole world. And I'm not using this as an excuse, but I think we have to remind ourselves we're in a point in time. And some of my most impactful allies have been male bosses. Have been male bosses that I've had that have helped me to find a place in what can often be particularly being a young woman I was in financial technology, so you're working in banks where the entire C-suite is men, and I'm walking in to tell them how to do their jobs better sometimes. But that took support and someone pushing me in there and giving me the stage to do that. So I think actually, particularly in digital and technology, men have a huge role to play in creating that environment. And it also goes down to same in governments. I was speaking to my counterpart in Rwanda the other day. Fascinating country with a fascinating story, and the Prime Minister has a mandate for gender equity in his cabinet. And so I forget the exact number, but I think it's 6 out of 10 of his ministers are women, because he's forcing that and holding himself accountable to that, but then also forcing his ministers to then pass that on. So there's just a shift. There's just a boldness that we have to take, and rather than being a kind of an either, a kind of a us versus them scenario, I think, being a little bit vulnerable, right? Asking for help and saying, I don't feel like I have a place here. Can you help me find one? And taking those opportunities and not being proud to take them is totally reasonable, and actually maybe that's some of the way forward. You're always going to have people that are not going to be supporters, and that the policies aren't going to be right, and we need to do more. Parental leave is a major one that in many economies we need to get right, and that then leaves it to private sector to try and correct what the public sector can't do. And so we have very generous benefits for parents of all gender, but that's bold and risky and costly, and it's individual kind of instances. So I do think we're on a journey, versus necessarily it being a fait accompli right now.
Thank you.
Do we have time? So quickly, so to completely agree, sometimes changes will have to be enforced. But at the same time, and at different places, till the time the social change can take place from the generations that are going to come. So it all has to start from the schools. Obviously, you can't forget that. Teach gender equality at school itself. But that will take time, right? So that will take another 30 to 50 years for that change to take place. But in the meantime, sometimes it helps when change is enforced, and if it's a clear business case that proven over a period of time across countries that investing in women is not a loss-making proposition. So once that has been proven, we still have biases which we might or might not realize as men. That's why when Excellency asked to do that exercise, I said, in my mind, the programmer here in this room is Excellency, because I've been involved in the Kumum and something to do with the e-commerce. And for me, this is a technology Spock that is sitting right next to me. But that's why I was biased. But there was this campaign that was running in India during Mother's Day, where they went and interviewed the children. It was a nice video that was getting circulated. So they went and interviewed the children of tech leaders in big companies in India, in big technology companies in India. They went and asked their children, if you want some help with your gaming console, who will you go to? So they said, I'll go to dad, or I'll call my friend, and etc., etc. So anything that is related to technology and who is your first go-to person is a man. So then, in spite of their mothers leading a big technology revolution in their countries, which is driving huge changes in the society and the economy. So even at home, the bias is so unrecognized that it is so inherent in everybody's mind that sometimes that change needs to be enforced. It's a difficult decision, so I tried that in the organizations that I've worked in, but it is not an easy decision. Sometimes you have to be fair, and then it becomes difficult to enforce. But if there are rules, for example, now there is a rule that 10% of your loans that you give out in the market has to be in Khmer Real, and every bank makes sure that they comply with that particular clause. So why can't we just say 30% of the workforce has to be women in every company? So sometimes the change enforced top down works wonders while we are waiting for this big social change to take place in the next 30, 40 years.
30 or 40, that's a long time.
I mean, I think we're like saying this without saying this. Is to talk about, female heads of state is one thing. It's a very lofty bar, and it's sort of just a figurehead in a lot of ways, right? But anyways, start with where you are, right? I mean, so, you're working for a company and you're thinking about what kind of policies in my company can I include that will make women feel more welcome in the workplace? Okay, I manage a training program for entrepreneurs. How can I think about how my training program is accessible to women? There's a reason why we don't host training at 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. because that's when kids get off school and mothers need to go pick them up and take care of the household and make sure that everyone's gotten into fresh clothes. There's ways to think about this in every place in your life. As a sister, a mother, a father, as a boss or a manager, or even within government, right? And I think we tend to get so focused on these very big, high goals that we forget to just think about the places that we exist in and think about, well, how can we make these places a place where a woman would feel comfortable?
Thank you for that. I think that is all the time we have for the questions, but I would ask our esteemed panelists if anyone has any last words of advice or comments that you would want to make about our topic.
Thank you so much. Hannah mentioned really good point that it starts with you, right? as a mother or young future mother. In his room is all, I see 99% women. And it's that when you have baby, you need to teach your girl not just to play with Barbie doll. Give them toy that don't go to the pink aisles. Give them toys that make them have creativity, like Lego, construction material. This will help expand their spatial awareness. So then they will be able to learn to like STEM. So this is what you have to do to help. And also as the father, need to be able to give the same priority to the girl, not just male boy always favor the boys, and then give, because this is how you build their confidence. When you don't give the girl confidence, they will not be able to sit in the society, and they always build the confidence looking up with the parent. That's their first learn, right? So this is what the message I would like to share. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I just said that as part of my previous question. So I still believe that it has to be, that change has to be enforced, because when I look around and when I see women-led organizations, and I see much better gender representation in women-led organizations. I don't know if it is by design or by default, or if it is because it's being forced. I'm not too sure, but I think it's a good thing to have. So sometimes the change has to be enforced.
Yeah, if you'd like, but yeah.
Maybe I'll say what I haven't said, which is I had hoped or expected to speak more about digital skills for women entrepreneurs. So if anyone wants to chat about this afterwards, please come and find me.
Great.
Yeah, I think I've kind of said everything that I wanted to say, but I think the topic on actually getting granular on what are the skills that are needed and how do we embed those into education. I do think we just probably all need to hold ourselves a little bit more accountable, and that's something I think in what we're thinking about and doing is like, what else can we be doing to change the landscape? How do we use the technology available to us to start making more informed decisions? How do we bring data into the conversation in relation to how we know the profile of potential small businesses that could be getting access to capital, and just using technology more to solve these problems versus technology being just the end state as well.
Thank you. And it's a good point. We did talk a little bit at a very high level about stuff, but there's also a lot of tactical pieces that came out, especially around mentorship, role models, changing the context. And I think those are some of the things we'll continue to explore on the committees as part of AmCham and just in our lives and our work. So I want to thank the panelists very much.
I was like, that was not planned, but I just want to say something because this was so interesting. And I just want to add also, when we talk about women empowerment or women equality, it's not just the women that have to do all the work. And Ivana mentioned that something that was empowering for her was having men bosses and allies and men willing to give up that space to help women. So we can be all the women in the world screaming on top of their lungs, this is our challenge, this is our barriers, this is all we face. But if men or people in power are not willing to hear and to make that change with us, then it's all for nothing. So that's why we have Manu on the panel, who's an ally, and that we have also men in the audience. So it's not just for women. We also need the men to play a role in that. That was my final.
That's an excellent point. Thank you so much, Marian. Thank you so much to our panelists, Ivana, Hannah, Manu, Excellency Ratha. And thank you everybody for coming. We have networking after this. I'm going to ask the panelists to just stand here for a moment, and we're going to do a photograph, as usual. And then a big round of applause for the panel. Thank you so much. And I'll ask Jesse and Marion to come up, and we'll do a quick photograph. And then I know you have a quick closing remark, and then there's networking and drinks and tacos. Where should we stand? Is this good? This is good. Okay. Thanks, everyone. And Jesse, I know you had closing remarks.
Yeah. So thank you for everyone for coming today. My name is Jessie, the Vice Chair of Women's Steering Committee. So also I would like to thank all the panelists for coming to share their excellent experiences and inspiring ideas. And after this, we will have the networking over there, and we can enjoy the taco, which is sponsored by Itakate. And especially big thanks to Mango Tango for his strong support. Yeah, thank you everyone.